Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sea Files. Thank you for another episode, and I appreciate all of you being here. Remember to give a thumbs up, subscribe, share this video, and I appreciate all of you who do that. There are many voices out there saying many different things. I'm one among the many, and I have a perspective, and you have a perspective, and all of our perspectives are very important because together they make the symphony of different understandings and perspectives of what's going on in the world. And so it's important that all of us be heard. And one of the things that's so difficult about trying to discuss various issues is the censorship that occurs. And there's not a whole lot that we individually can do about that. But we just continue to fight to get the truth out. There are things I cannot talk about because I would be censored. There are things I would like to talk about, but I would be censored. So I do the best that I can to put out the information that I can without causing alarm or red flags. So thank you for being here, and we're going to do the best we can to give you the best information that we can over time. In this video, we're going to continue to talk about the Middle East because, folks, it's escalating, and there are concerns that it could go way beyond the border of Israel and the border of the Gaza Strip. And it could involve other nations, which could bring us into a very severe world war. This is not just fear porn. It's not just rhetoric. This is reality, that this very well could happen. We're also going to talk about why I believe that Gog and Magog are not occurring today, and why I believe that Armageddon is not occurring today. That'll be a brief explanation of that. I know there are going to be preachers all throughout the West saying we have entered now a time of the battle of Armageddon. It is going to be gathered together among the nations, and they're going to fight. And this is how what we're seeing today in Israel and Gaza and all that is how it's going to be drawn in. Especially, they will say this after what I'm putting out tonight. They see the same things that I'm seeing, but they're misunderstanding Bible passages. So with that in mind, let's begin with some news out of Israel and a statement that was given by a brigadier general, a current brigadier general, who is currently in Israel. And this comes out of the Epoch Times. Now this general, his name is Avigdor Kahalani. Avigdor Kahalani. And so I'll just refer to him as the general from this point on. Well, he became famous, please excuse me, he became famous during the 1973 Yom Kippur War. And please excuse me for a moment. That war involved Israel and Egypt in a surprise attack on Israel during a Jewish holiday. So Egypt's army crossed over the Suez Canal in 1967 and into the Sinai Peninsula and it was occupied Israel during that time. And Syrian tanks lumbered across the Golan Heights with Israel's Galilee vulnerable below. It was about 15 miles away. So Syria thrusts were thwarted by vastly outnumbered Israeli tanks. One of their battalions was led by Lieutenant Colonel Kahalani on the battlefield, and that area now it became known as the Valley of Tears. So the resistance that he gave them in the tanks in the Golan Height area gave the nation time to reorganize, mobilize, and fight back. So the young battalion commander won Israel's Medal of Valor, and that's its highest military honor. He's now a retired brigadier general. He's 79 years old. He sees Israel's latest Hamas war in stark terms. And let me give you what he has to say, his statements. It should be very revealing, very enlightening as to his perspective on what's going on over there. Here's the quote, and it's a long quote. He says, "I'm sorry, I'm very cruel, but I don't have the patience for games anymore. You have to shoot and eliminate and destroy. It's either us or them." That's the either or fallacy that I've talked about before. Either they're utterly destroyed or we're utterly destroyed. That's his mentality. He continues on. The experience we are going through now is much worse than the Yom Kippur War. I have no doubt at all about it. In the Yom Kippur War, we fought army against army. Here the citizens of the country have been abandoned. Until now, I don't understand why. He says, I'm not going to make public inquiries now. At the moment, all we need to do is strengthen our soldiers who are going to enter Gaza. So we know they're going to do foot entry into Gaza. Foot soldiers going in. Maybe some are going to enter Lebanon. Now we're going outside of the Gaza Strip and going into a foreign country. He says this is what we need to do now. He says, I'll start with Lebanon because it's on the brink. If Lebanon starts a war, well, if Israel is encouraging into Lebanon, not the other way around, how's that Lebanon starting a war? He says we have to blow up Beirut. If Lebanon starts a war, then they'd have to blow up Beirut. In other words, if they don't allow us to go in and commit our atrocities in Lebanon, then that means they're starting a war, and we'll just eliminate Beirut. Now stop and think about what that statement means. We're going to continue. He continues to say, he says to blow up all the water systems, all the electricity systems. Talking about Lebanon and Beirut. Further, he says this, let there be no situation where we are fighting against Hezbollah. Hezbollah should not interest us, he says. Very interesting statement. Why? Why would they not interest him? He says, we will hit the places from which the missiles are launched, but what needs to be taken down in Beirut is the big towers, destroy the infrastructure, shut down electricity, and shut down their economy. So, we're not that concerned about Hezbollah. Really what we want to do is destroy Lebanon. That's basically what I'm hearing here. He continues on. He says, this is all the state of Lebanon. We are fighting against a state. We must give them such a blow that they will not recover in the next 20 years, and we must, without mercy, bomb and eliminate and destroy, unequivocally. So bombing and eliminating and destroying in that fashion would include the death of women and children and babies and people of that sort. He continues on and he says this, regarding Gaza, I'm not sure that the plan the Prime Minister presented to eliminate Hamas, uproot it, and so on, is realistic. He says, let's say we go inside Gaza with tanks and find all the terrorists. Once residents stay there, what will happen after a year? Won't they build a Hamas youth movement and then it will develop into an army? Now, this is an assumption that he is making. He doesn't know this for sure. He continues with this. That's why the government there should be changed, and the government should be controlled by foreign countries so that they will not be able to develop any weapons and will not be able to develop such a regime of hatred and enmity for the state of Israel. He says if that happens, maybe there will be a chance for quiet. If not, then we will advance to Gaza City, then we will advance to Khan Yunis, and maybe we will go also reach Rafah. He has a fundamental misunderstanding as to how people who would be indifferent to him in Israel and just basically say, just leave us alone, let us live our lives, and we can live our lives in harmony, to, oh my, they're coming in and they're creating all kinds of devastation and death and atrocities, to, well, me being peaceful and staying peaceful didn't work because they're being very hostile and violent toward us. What kind of effect do you think, folks, that might have on a person? Could that turn them into a militant? Could that turn them into a resistance fighter? What the world calls a terrorist. Someone who otherwise would not do that? It's very possible. Now, he continues and says this. All I care about is that not even one Israeli soldier gets hurt in all of this. And I say to the soldiers, shoot. Don't move 1 meter forward. Don't be heroes. Make sure everyone in front of you lies on the floor. Don't enter a trapped house and get killed. Blow up the house if you realize it's trapped. How are they going to determine if it's trapped or not? How many homes are going to be blown up based upon a hunch? That could be very false. And in words, the hunch could be completely wrong. He continues and says this, and stop pitying. Constantly think of the images of what they have done now in the Gaza Strip. Remember these images and shout, O Lord God, to whom vengeance belongs. Now, I've talked about a war based on vengeance, or a war based on revenge rather than self-defense. He just confirmed it. He continues with this. Arabic is a language, but it's also a mentality. We're constantly talking to them in a language they don't understand. They only understand the language of power, he says. These are assumptions made by the general, and these are not confirmed. Quote, and now the question is, us or them. Now, when he says us or them, when he says they don't understand any language other than power, who is he referring to? Is he referring to Hezbollah? Is he referring to Hamas? Or is he referring to the everyday, normal citizen of Palestine who had nothing to do with any aggression against Israel? Who is he referring to? It's not clear in the article. He continues and says this, and now the question is, us or them, and for me, there's only one answer, us. So to answer what victory looks like, he says this, he says the image of victory is that they are asking for a ceasefire. But he says this, but in my opinion, you have to be realistic. Is it possible to kill all of Hamas? You cannot distinguish who is Hamas and who is not. These are civilian people, and one can turn around and hold his 2 children by the hand and say, what do you want from me? I'm a citizen, a farmer, and so on. So this is why he's assuming that these citizens that are being targeted are Hamas. It's very weak reasoning. but it's there. He continues and says this: that's why this business is so much more complex. You have to be there and stay and do the actions until a new government is established there. So this is regime change, which is a term that came out of American strategies of sending the military, destroying everything, and then setting it back up in the image of America. A regime change. And this is what he's talking about in the Gaza Strip. He continues and says this: the new government has to rely on other countries and maintain their close connection and dependence on the State of Israel. The State of Israel will make them want to do. The State of Israel will make them want to not harm us. I would have said it a different way, but anyway, that's what he had to say. Now he says this: and they bit the hand that fed them. So bit the hand that fed them. Now what is this feeding? It's an occupation. It's a prison-like feeding, and they only give the Palestinians just enough food to stay alive, and no more. Just enough water to maybe stay alive, but no more. So he says they bit the hand that feed them. Hardly do they feed them at all. He says, so obviously there is no logic here. Well, it doesn't seem to me, General, there's any logic on your side either. He says it's like the scorpion that stings the frog. Have you heard that story? Where the scorpion says to the frog, look, let me climb on your back and you can take me across the stream and then I'll just climb off and we go our separate ways. And the frog says, no way, scorpion, I'm not going to let you on my back. You'll sting me and kill me. And the scorpion says, no, no, no. He says, I promise I won't sting you, because if I stung you while you're taking me across the pond, we would both die. And so the frog, after he thinks about it for a little while, he says, okay, well, I'll take you across then. Gets in the middle of the pond with the scorpion on his back. The scorpion stings him, and the frog says, you promised me you wouldn't sting me because you said you would die if you sting me. Why in the world did you just kill both of us? And the scorpion said, I couldn't help it. It's my nature. And that's what he's saying. It's the nature of who he identifies as Hamas/Palestinians, because he's one of these guys that says, that believes that all Palestinians are associated with Hamas, which is a false belief and paradigm. And he says out of their nature, it's natural for them to do atrocities against Israel, to attack Israel, and so forth. He continues with this statement: there's no logic here in the Middle East, but only a different government will make a difference. Until that happens, we'll rule the territory. We need to protect ourselves. Now, there's almost a psychotic response and belief in this victimhood of Israel. Israel is the biggest victim in the world. Everybody's out to get us. Everybody wants to destroy us. So we have to go scorched earth on the entire world to protect ourselves. This is a mentality. He says further, Mr. Kalahani said Israel needs to bomb Gaza, even flatten it, quote, as much as necessary, end quote, to conquer it. So he doesn't care how many children and babies and women and so forth are killed, how many innocent people are killed. It means absolutely nothing to him. He could care less. He says you need to move a kilometer or two. Don't rush. If you see suspicious houses, flatten them. We don't care. Obviously he doesn't care who dies and who lives in that. He says, quote, you need to find their tunnels where they are and burn them in one way or another. Burn them in one way or another. Flamethrower going into a tunnel and destroying people. Well, what if they're just scared families hiding down there to try to get away from an invading army? Anyway, he goes on, he says it requires us to go inside. It's unavoidable. He says, let's see any more quotes. Here he goes. He says, but now the citizen has been abandoned, and there is a very big rift between the state and the citizen. This rift is deep. The last time this happened was in the Holocaust. The Jew hid, they came to him, they found him, and they slaughtered him. Which seems to me is the same thing you're doing to the Palestinians right now. Anyway, he continues and he says, now, even though there is a state of Israel, the Jew is hiding. See, this is this irrational victimhood mentality that has infected the state of Israel. These people have been mind manipulated to the nth degree. The United States got hit hard with 9/11 and other incidences of that sort. We don't even have this mentality. Anyway, continue on. He says this. He says the Jew is hiding. They come to him and slaughter him. So the entire state of Israel must ask itself, how did we get in this situation? The citizens should protect themselves. They should make sure they have all the protection measures that will give them a sense of security. The citizens will stand behind the army, embrace the army because of the embrace of the army by the citizens as a weapon. The soldier who fights on the battlefield should feel he is fighting for his commander, for his friends, but most importantly, he must feel that the home front is behind him, supporting him every minute and every second, and embracing him. And I might add, as they continue to slaughter unarmed citizens who had nothing to do with anything. He says this. Now I want you, please pay attention. I know this is getting long. He had a lot of quotes, but look, pay attention to what he's saying, because he's really giving the mental, well, let's put it this way. He's giving the mentality that's probably prominent in Israel right now. Because I've seen interviews with Israelis asking them, what should happen with the Palestinians, and they have basically said exterminate all of them and build a parking lot over there. This is their very callous, very bloodthirsty, very indifferent attitude. So let's continue to read his quotes. He says, the citizens have to go through such difficult experiences as life is unavoidable, and take it as a difficult experience that we need to go through, and that eventually we will win against a bunch of unarmed. Anyway, it just drives me nuts. Win against a bunch of unarmed citizens that are peaceful. Okay, you say they're not peaceful. They attacked Israel. No. That's Hamas. It's claimed that that's Hamas who attacked Israel, not these Palestinian families. Two different entities. And this general apparently can't distinguish between them. But, some people are just bloodthirsty and want to... Anyway, that's just my opinion. I just... Anytime people are just being indiscriminately murdered like that, it just disturbs me. It disturbs me really bad. Either side that does it, it disturbs me. Anyway, he says, is there a light at the end of tunnel? He says, surely there's a light at the end of tunnel. Tunnel, excuse me. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Did we have another way? He says, we don't have another way. After being injured on the battlefield, he spent a year in the hospital. His experiences in the other war have really tainted his thinking. Now listen. He says this. I said to myself, Avigdor, you're going to go through a very difficult experience, and I see you growing to become a man out of it. I went through the worst suffering one could experience. You need mental strength for that. Leadership needs to be an example. It needs to radiate power. There are 1,001 things that can be done. First of all, the leaders of this country need to set an example to the citizens. You are now going through a difficult experience. Remember that we don't have another country. You're now going to go through an experience experienced by every new generation that guards the country. Look back and see the flag of the country being raised. Look back and see what happened to our country throughout all these years. This victimhood mentality, it's just incredible. Look at the Holocaust. They always go back to that, as they're creating their own Holocaust in the Gaza Strip right now, and see what can be done to us if we are not strong. And in that respect, you will be the best professional in the world. Take care of yourself, but get the job done. So he's very indiscriminate. And who dies? He doesn't care if a bunch of babies and children and women and citizens die, because he says we have no reason to believe that they're not Hamas, and we have to just kill them all. In my mind, folks, this is just pure insanity. This is insanity. And how many people over here in the United States are just going bonkers supporting this kind of action by Israel? That's called mass psychosis. All right. So in Gaza, medics say Israel was targeting ambulances and health facilities. Medical organizations say Israeli air attacks have hit health services in what could constitute a war crime. And there's a picture of an ambulance that's just all tore up with blood coming out the side of the ambulance. Talal Taha and his team at the Al-Shifa hospital, Gaza's city's largest, received an emergency call on Saturday evening and leaped into action. Earlier that day, Israel had begun pummeling the sealed-off Gaza Strip, following a stunning attack by armed Palestinian group Hamas on Israeli territory. 3 vehicles headed to a location in the vicinity of the city's eastern cemetery. The team followed the sound of cries for help as the city was enveloped in darkness. Quote, all of a sudden we were targeted by an air attack and we ran for safety. Taha, a paramedic, told Al Jazeera. The emergency team, and now as soon as you hear Al Jazeera, a lot of your brains are triggered because of mind conditioning to say, oh, well, it's Al Jazeera, you forget it, can't trust the source. The emergency team jumped into their cars on Salah al-Din Road, and the vehicles proceeded a few meters before another airstrike hit. So basically, these airstrikes were hitting, and this ambulance gets hit, and hospitals apparently are getting hit. It says 4 paramedics in less than half an hour today, despite prior coordination, and were targeted. The international targeting of medical teams. Targeting medical personnel is a grave breach of international humanitarian law and to humanity. PRCS demands accountability for this war crime, urging immediate investigation and justice for the victims. So war crimes are being, war crime accusations are being hurled at Israel. And that this kind of thing is going to continue, as these accusations will continue to be hurled at Israel as they continue to incur into Gaza. And Israel's going to have, if they want to continue doing that, they're going to have to endure these accusations against them. Now, Mark Levin, the great one, as Hannity calls him, says this. Well, this is the article. Samson option. Mark Levin urges Israel to consider firing off entire nuclear arsenal if threatened. You know, I'm just speechless on this. Let me just read you what the article has to say. This is Information Liberation. This is what the article's out of, by Chris Minahan. It's October 18th, 2023. Jewish pundit Mark Levin threatened Samson option if America does not supply Israel with weapons. That is still on. Let's go ahead and see if we can play this video that you hear it.
Put that on the table of debate now. What are they going to do if they're surrounded? What are they going to do if 150,000 advanced missiles are going to be shot? What are they going to do if Iran gets involved? Well, they can't win a conventional war. What are they going to do? I think I know what they do. I know what we would do. We would destroy the enemy, because otherwise we're exterminated. That's all I have to say.
Well, Mark, you brought up nuclear war, I mean, essentially. And also we're talking about America's involvement. And how, as
no,
this
we're not.
expands...
No, we're not. No, we're not.
How are we not talking about America's involvement? America's not going to get involved if there's a nuclear war? Come on.
No, we're not. If you drop... Look.
I'm
Rachel,
sorry,
hold on.
Yeah.
Rachel, when you ask questions like that, you need to answer them.
What? Mark is losing it. Mark Levin is starting to lose it over this. Rachel, when you ask questions like that, you need to answer it. So she has to answer her own question? I think it was a legitimate question.
Just ask them. What are they going to do if there's multiple front war? What are they going to do if they have kidnaps or hostages and other hostages?
You hear him stumbling? But they kidnap hostages. You know, when I went into the military in 1979, we had the Iran hostage situation, and we thought that we were going to go to war with Iran. But we didn't. And we were able to resolve it and bring the hostages home without blowing the world up. It's not an either-or dichotomy. There are other options. There are humanitarian ways of resolving these situations. We jump to a kinetic war way too fast, way too often.
What are they going to do? Die, I guess.
We had a general on earlier in the show who said that our military is not doing well. You know, recruitments are low. They're not focused. He described a military that's not prepared in many ways, and yet there we are in Ukraine. We could have another front here. China's on the move. I mean, this has to be. We have to pause and think a little bit here, because it just sounds like a roll towards
Rachel,
war.
Okay, you heard her question. What do you think? How would you answer it? I think she's absolutely right. There's this real heavy attempt to produce another world war. Millions of people would be exterminated during a war like that. But the people who would profit off the war, they could care less. They don't care about your life or my life. They care about their money.
Honestly, I don't know what you're talking about. What does Ukraine have to do with this and China have to do?
He totally lost. He didn't understand the question. He's not answering the question. Well, I don't say. What does Ukraine have to do with this? Has everything to do with it. What she asked was, we have overextended ourselves. They're trying to get us into Ukraine. They're trying to get us involved with, protecting Taiwan from China. And now they're trying to get us, they're pulling us into Israel, with a military that's depleted. How are we supposed to do all this? This is what she's asking. And he's like, well, I don't understand what Ukraine has to do with all this. Mark is losing it.
Talking about the Israelis are going there.
I'm talking. Well, the Israelis have their issue, but I'm concerned that a lot of the talk that's going on now is about involving the United States, and that's another matter. And it's not anti-Semitic to say.
I don't hear him talking about that. No, we got a carrier group over there. We got an amphibious group over there. We got Marines that have hit the ground in that conflict. According to news reports I'm seeing, No, I don't hear anything about America being involved. This is what the warmongers do.
We as Americans should take a pause.
Okay, look, I didn't say it was anti-Semitic. That's number one. So I don't have...
Did she ever accuse him of being anti-Semitic? Not once in her questioning. How did he jump to that?
That either. Number two, the Israelis haven't asked us to get involved. They asked us to give them equipment. Number three, they have their own arsenal, which they never admit. So while you bring up all these issues to me, which kind of fogs precisely, you're the Prime Minister of Israel. You're about to send hundreds of thousands of your troops in to take out the enemy once and for all.
Who's the enemy? By the way, Ben Netanyahu he's deep state. He's deep state. Who's the enemy? Palestinian women and children, old men there that are just Palestinian Christians. Are they the enemy?
We saw the slaughter that took place. He's not thinking about Ukraine or China, neither are we. And I'm saying to you this, I'm telling you the truth. Sometimes it's tough. If Israel is going to face annihilation, you think they have those nukes in there to...
I had to pause him there. Who's facing annihilation? Israel or Palestine?
Dust? I'm not even encouraging anything be done. I'm not even saying nuke them, nuke them, nuke them. I am saying Iran needs to understand, and Hezbollah needs to understand, that if you think you're going to wipe out these people, you're not. And so we have to deal with reality. And reality is that America's involved in this. America, I said they're going to drop them. In my opinion, they might. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm the only one bringing this up. I'm not even encouraging it. But if you're a country that has that kind of weaponry, and your people are going to be slaughtered as they were, except this time totally destroyed, they need to be thinking about all their options. And my guess is they are. I don't know. So when we go on TV and say, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? They're surrounded. They're going to wipe them out. We can't send troops. We can't. Fine. But if I'm the president or prime minister of Israel, I got to think it all through. All of it. As far as the U.S. military being stretched, that's not Israel's fault. It's nothing to do with Israel. And it might be nice if we actually started to fund our military too, and not treat it like it's some secondary agency and put in.
Okay, yeah. Funding. It's not doing any good. Look, they've turned the military into a woke military. Nobody wants to join. They mandated the Pokemon, and a lot of members got out. And others don't want to go in because they don't want to get the Pokemon. I mean, there's a number of reasons why recruitment is down. It has a lot to do with the circumstances of the military right now, and veterans coming out and saying, I wouldn't go in if I were you. There's a problem with recruitment. We still have a very formidable military. Our equipment is still very good, and we are able to protect our shores and take care of things. But what we cannot continue to do is be, as well, this is a phrase from the 60s with Vietnam, we can't continue to be the policemen of the world. We can't continue to be the military arm of the deep state, the military arm of the New World Order. Which, by the way, those who don't think those who say, well, you're just talking conspiracy theories when you were ordered. Did you ever hear Bush Sr.'s speeches? Bush 41, when he was constantly talking about a new world order. Wouldn't be prudent unless we had a new world order. I mean, that's, you know, he didn't say that phrase, but I'm just trying to imitate him. But here's the thing. He talked constantly about the New World Order, and yet it's a conspiracy theory, YouTube? Wikipedia? Snopes? Are you calling Bush 41 a conspiracy theorist? This is how convoluted these people are. Let me finish this up.
Percent increase for the EPA. We have a lot of problems in this country. A lot. But that's not on the head of the Israeli people who are trying to survive. Yeah. I'm done unless somebody else has another question.
No, Mark, it all.
Yeah, and it's not on the head of the Palestinian people who are trying to survive, whom you want wiped out, Mark. Israeli president suggests that civilians in Gaza are legitimate targets. Let's see if I can get a quote. It's talking about the background. I can't find a good quote out of here. Anyway, that's the article. Ordering 1 million people in Gaza to evacuate when there's no safe place to go is not an effective warning. Yeah, that's exactly. Where are they going to evacuate? Where are they going to evacuate, folks? They can't go outside of their borders. They can't go into the sea. That's blocked off. They tried to go south and get aid from Egypt, humanitarian aid from Egypt, and they got bombed. After they were told to go south by Israel with their leaflets that were dropped in Gaza City saying, we're going to hit Gaza City. Y'all might want to go south, and civilians might want to go south toward Egypt. So they go south toward Egypt, and there's video of missiles hitting that border between the Gaza Strip and Egypt as they show up doing what the Israelis said, this is what you might want to do. Took their suggestion and they got killed for it. Oh, so this is acceptable? Well, here's the final part of it. This is concerning Russia. This is not natural news. Putin preparing Russians for World War III with nationwide nuclear war drills. You don't think it's not looking like it's going to expand outside of this conflict in the Gaza Strip? They're talking about hitting Lebanon? Who else are they talking about hitting? Iran? Secretly? Talking about it? Russia is paying attention, and they're saying, we're going to make sure we're ready because this thing looks like it's about to completely blow up. All right, so that's why I wanted to bring this up, because there are indications and signs that this is going to get really big. No guarantees. I can't predict the future. But this is what's being believed by the surrounding nations that are watching this happen. Now, this is where the Western evangelical, Zionist, dispensationalist Christians will go. Revelation 16:16, and he gathered them together into a place called, in the Hebrew tongue, Armageddon. Before that, for they are, let's see, where am I? Yeah, here we go. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come. This is all a lot. When he talks about unclean spirits like frogs and all that, it's metaphoric language that Jews understood, but we here in the 21st century English-speaking Gentiles, we're not going to understand this that well unless we teach ourselves from comparing Scripture with Scripture, this thought process that they had in their metaphoric language. So we'll continue on. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. And they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watches and keeps his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. And he gathered them together into a place called the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. So people are going to be talking about Armageddon. Oh, this is the Russia talking about getting prepared for this and all of that. Yes, this is a precursor to the Battle of Armageddon, folks. Chapters 4 through I think 19 of the book of Revelation, it all talks about a 7-year period called the tribulation period. That tribulation occurred between around 63 AD to 70 AD. And in 70 AD, it culminated with the destruction of the temple and the destruction of Jerusalem. And the Jews were scattered around the world. It's a first century fulfillment. And we know this because when Jesus was asked about the temple going down, he gave the Olivet Discourse in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. And Jesus' own timing statements that he gave in that discourse was clear that it was a first century fulfillment. The apostles that were sitting there listening to him give this discourse, he said, would not die, that generation would not pass away until all those things would be fulfilled. So we know that's first century. But the Zionists, dispensationalists, evangelical Western pastors are going to deny that. They're going to completely ignore the timing statements and audience relevancy of the passage. They're going to completely ignore the context of the passage, pull it out of its context, and apply it to our day. This is exactly what they do. So no, this is not going to head toward Armageddon because it's already been fulfilled. Now, if you look at Gog and Magog, which is another one they're going to talk about out of Ezekiel 38, 39, and so forth, Gog and Magog was fought on horses with swords and spears and bows and arrows. This is the language that's in those passages. This war is not being fought on horses with spears and bows and arrows and so forth. Oh, it's metaphoric. It really means, like the spears really mean rockets and the horses really mean tanks. And this is what Zionist dispensationalists do with those passages. They completely rip them out of their context, completely give them a different meaning to try and fit them into our day. No, horses mean horses, bows mean bows, swords mean swords. This is how that battle was fought. If you want to see the fulfillment of that battle when it occurred, Gog and Magog, look in the book of Esther. And toward the end of the book of Esther, the Jews defended themselves against an onslaught. And that was the battle of Gog and Magog at that point in time. Now, this is probably a shock to people who have not heard anything like that. I suggest, if you want to learn more about that you get the book Last Days Madness by Gary DeMar, D-E-M-A-R. Gary DeMar, Last Days Madness. Get that book and read it and get a different perspective than what you're reading in a Schofield Bible or in a Left Behind series by Jerry Jenkins and Tim LaHaye, or by Hal Lindsey and Late Great Planet Earth, or Clarence Larkin, Dispensational Truth, and so forth. You'll get a completely different perspective from what they give you. And it's a perspective called Partial Preterism, Postmillennialism. You can read about it in the book. It's a legitimate perspective concerning Bible prophecy. So that's what I have for you tonight. So let me encourage you. The world looks like it's about to blow up, but it's not going to. Here's why I believe that: because God is going to take care of business. God is not going to allow the earth to blow up because he still has plans for the earth. It's clear from other passages that we haven't mentioned yet in these videos. But maybe we'll go through some of those later on. Thanks for watching. I hope you find many blessings the rest of the week. I'm not going to be able to make videos but sporadically, starting Friday until about November the 4th or the 5th. So I'll do them as I can, but it's going to be a very, very intense and busy time. So I'll just let you know that ahead of time. So God bless, and we'll see you at the next C-Files.